Welcome to today's webinar. My name is Lorena Fikes, and I'm part of our marketing team here at Tatango. And we're super excited to have Christine Niffick from Wiser. She's the VP of Customer Success, and I'm going to pass it over to Christine. Welcome, Christine.
Thanks, Lorena. I'm excited to be here. Hi, everybody. My name is Christine Vienna Kniffik, and I'm the VP of Customer Success here at Wiser. I am talking today to talk to you about how to scale your customer success operations overnight. And the fact that you're here means that you have a reason that you might need to scale them overnight, which is a really good thing. That excites me, and I know it's an exciting time for all of us. So let's dive in. I'll tell you a little bit about Wiser. Wiser, it was started 5 years ago. We actually had our 5th anniversary or birthday, whatever you like to call it, yesterday. And so we turned 5. We started 5 years ago. I was not with the company at the time. And we started in the space of career and alumni services for colleges and universities. At the time, it was a slow and steady start. It was started by 3 co-founders. We're Cleveland based. And like I said, we serve the higher education market. So as you can, we offered at the beginning areas for virtual community building for career and alumni mentorship opportunities. So for universities, it provided a way for alumni to give back to the institution that wasn't financial in nature. And for students, of course, it provided an opportunity to receive mentorship opportunities from valuable alumni sources. When pandemic hit in 2020, of course, everything changed. So we started out, like I said, as that social platform for connecting current students and alumni. Traction was slow but steady. We did have what I would call a dedicated account manager from about 2017 to 2019. There wasn't really a specific CS function. There were a couple different people who had filled that role. But then, to be honest with you, Wiser fell on some fairly hard times. We had seen a dramatic lull in business, and we actually cut the entire staff to 6 people. I was not part of the team yet. But so in 2019, we cut it to 6 individuals, including the co-founders. So really, really small core team. And at the beginning of 2020, we started with 30 clients and the 6 staff members that I'm talking about. So we're all familiar with how it started versus how it's going. For us, that's a good thing. So pandemic hitting in March 2020 changed everything, much like I'm sure it did for all of you. Now the universities and colleges that we were working with were calling and saying, yes, career services and alumni are great, but do you have any way to help me with enrollment and admissions and virtual orientations and all of the activities that I need to hold on campus? The universities and our partner institutions were starting to call in and say, career and alumni services is great. Can you help me with all of these other things? So what that evolved into very quickly, literally overnight, was that we started working to help our partner institutions with virtual orientation, virtual welcome centers to help prospective students learn about the institution itself when they're deciding where to go to school. And then our largest area is called Yield, which in higher education, that just basically means if you've been accepted to an institution, are you going to actually pick that institution, deposit and enroll and get there, whatever that means, in the fall? So what that meant for Wiser was that we suddenly had a giant boom in business and yet still no core CS function. We had, at the time, we had one amazing person. She was handling all of the customer stuff, but she had no CS background and she was in her first year out of college. And she was one of those people, she's still with us, and she's one of those people who just runs. And she did a fantastic job. She's amazing, but no single person without all of that in place can get it done. So she had to work really, really hard, and we realized really quickly that we would need to scale up. So today, we now have a CS team of 6 managing about 150 customers across 5 different product lines. And the company itself is at 22 total employees, just over 300% year-over-year growth from last year. So what I want to talk to you about today is building customer success, what that means, the steps that we took to do it, how we involved automation, and what that really meant, the important things that we considered, and the steps we took to get there. I think about this in 2 phases. The first phase is what I would call firefighting. Like I said, the core Wiser team had been around for several years. I, however, joined the team at the end of March because we identified that this was happening, this crazy boom in business, changing circumstances requiring us to get something in place. So I joined at the end of March. and we had to go off running. My very first step was to build the team. We'll go into a lot more detail on these. You'll see that it's a dotted line because I actually technically started doing that and posted the job recommendations before I started. The next step, step number 2, was to get visibility. My third step was to learn the current customer journey, however rough or basic it may have been. And then my fourth step of the first phase was to train the team and figure out how we were going to actually handle it. First step to build the team. We wanted to make sure that we had a really solid composition of the team. We recruited and hired 4 people within 3 weeks. We had everybody fully functional in 30 days. And like I said, I started that way before I was even joining the team officially, because I knew that we just couldn't go on having one person run it all. We had everyone start as customer success associates, really having the same generalized role. And then we specialized our team functions as our processes got more mature, as our technology got more mature, and also our understanding of our market audience advanced. So next, we focused on, for the team composition, I was really focusing on 1 or 2 areas, focusing on general business acumen and industry experience. For us, that industry is higher education. So we have some individuals on our team who were prior heads of career and alumni services, prior heads of admission, and things like that. You'll notice, though, that I didn't focus on prior customer success experience. I really would have loved to, but everybody has to make trade-offs, and the trade-off that I made was I didn't have a huge budget, so I decided that I would hire really smart people and that we would build the processes together, and I figured that I could teach them the CS side of things. So then finally, we had to bring the team on board. I mentioned that it was an extremely busy time of year for Wiser, primarily in our area of business. March, April, and May are the busiest times of the year for our customers. So it was not terribly convenient that we were onboarding this huge slew of new customers. We were almost operating at 5x of what they had been just 30 days before. And we were onboarding and training all these new team members also during the busy season. So it was basically throw your feet in, get moving, and we'll all learn it together. Wiser also at that time didn't have a formal employee onboarding process. So I built my own. Then we took it, we had our eyes on scalability. I actually delegated that out to another member of my team. She has since created a full onboarding program for CS at Wiser, so that in the event we either have someone who we have attrition and we need to hire someone new, or looking towards the future, if we're going to end up adding more people, then we'd be able to move forward and bring people on very quickly and efficiently. Step 2 for me was to get visibility. We all in customer success know about the dreaded spreadsheet, and this was ours. When I first joined the team officially, one of the first things that I did was to ask for things like a list of our customers and the products they had purchased. And I'm sure not surprising to any of you in customer success, that was a little bit hard to come by. So I was given a few spreadsheets and I didn't have much else. And that terrified me. I didn't feel like I had my arms around what I was looking at. So I immediately implemented a customer success platform, in this case, Tatango. You can see the dreaded spreadsheet on the left that had been maintained, but actually when I looked further, there hadn't even been notes made in it since 2018. So we didn't have a lot to go on there, but we pretty much instantly implemented Tatango. For us, that meant that we were using the segment.io integration. So we were able to bring that information in really easily. We still had some adequate things that we needed to do in terms of adding more instrumentation, getting more product usage data, but we had initially what we needed. And then we also brought in the HubSpot data for all of the business data. So immediately I was able to start providing full visibility to my executive team, full visibility and reporting to our board of directors, and proving out this new concept that I was introducing and proving to them that we were ready to scale. For us, step 3 is learning the current customer journey. Now, however basic or advanced it was, I really didn't feel like I could teach anyone or further advance it until I really dug in and owned it and understood it myself. So we did this also while servicing a very, very large onboarding backlog. We onboarded 30 new customers just in March and April, and keep in mind that the new team didn't start until April itself. So that one CSM was very, very busy. The process when we got there for onboarding was somewhat documented, but each launch was an all hands event. I remember my first day on the job. They invited me to a Zoom war room, as they called it, because it was literally an all hands on deck event where they were processing the data and working to launch this customer. And it was pretty intimidating to me. And also I knew that it was definitely not a scalable thing for us to do. So that was what we dug into right away. What you see here is what our rough customer journey was at the beginning. We worked really, really hard because we were making this up real time. To in onboarding, we were gathering our requirements, configuring our sites for our customers, receiving their data, helping them design everything. For those of you already familiar with customer journeys, you will notice that customers signing the contract has a big red dot. That's because a lot of times in these cases, we were moving so fast and university procurement was so long that we were actually starting before they signed the contract, which just gave me an absolute heart attack. And we got burned by that a few times, as I learned quite quickly when we came in. So there was a lot that we had to do to change that around. So you can see really there's two chunks. We had onboarding and then they got live. And then we were doing a lot of daily manual data processing and exchanges. And there really wasn't much thought put into what happened next. We really didn't have much else of a customer journey. We certainly weren't considering crazy things like renewals or expansion at that point. So we had some work to do. So step 4 is train the team. So we were, like I said, we were doing this as quickly as we could. We took the very common see one, do one, teach one approach with our implementations. It was really critical for us because we knew that we were going to be having such an influx and we expected it to continue what we had been experiencing, that we were going to need every single person on the team to handle implementations. Now, I know that that is something that can be controversial. Not everybody has everyone do that. And I will tell you that since then, we no longer have all of our CSMs managing implementations, but everyone has the capability. For scalability purposes, it was really important that we were able to jump in and do it then. So what we did to train the team, we had a few critical things. Like everyone else in 2020, we were remote. So it was really important for us that we had the digital tools in place to do it. We created detailed playbooks. What you see here is a manual success plan to Tango, but we had really detailed playbooks that were the resource for our customer success team members. What do I do when? What do I do when a customer talks about churn? What do I do when a customer wants to do a new implementation, has a sales reference, all sorts of things. These really served as our playbooks for our team to really enable them to be able to make their own decisions and have that guided approach. Very, very important for us. We also were training the team to be logging their customer interactions, assessing sentiment on a regular basis, watching for churn indicators. So all of these things were really critical items for us. The main way that we did that, and I knew that everyone would be able to go off on their own, was we did some simple readbacks to leadership prior to sending them on their own into their solo customer meetings, and then frequent check-ins from there. So that was our phase 1, where we were firefighting. We were just trying to get our arms around everything we had. Then we moved into phase 2. For me, it's really, really critical that once you've had a moment to get your arms around what's happening, you then have to sit back for a moment and reflect what's working and what's not. So I really wanted my team to be involved in that. So for phase 2, I knew that we would be addressing automation and really, really getting prepared to scale, as well as addressing the actual advanced stages of the customer journey and working towards customer outcomes and those sorts of things. So the first thing you see before, we were in a very specific timeline. Step 1, step 2, step 3. Here's where it kind of diverges a little bit, and I was really excited about that. The first thing that we did was we went into what I call a 90-day start, stop, continue. I'm sure many of you have done it. So this is just something that we did. I'm sure you've done something very, very similar, but it was really important to me that our strategic planning and where we decided to take things next, I had to get my team bought in, because otherwise, if they were just regurgitating the steps that I told them, I really didn't think they'd be able to own it, especially in a remote capacity. So we did a series of strategic planning sessions where we did the start, stop, continue. What are we doing well? What are we not? And what do we need to iterate on? So then we used those. We broke them out into project categories. And you can see here, that's not really for you to consume, but just to kind of understand what our process was, we broke all of those things out and then put them into an effort impact matrix. And those projects became each of my team members' internal projects and their strategic work for the next 6 months or so. What that meant for us was that we were able to, one, like I said, have the team own what they were doing, which was really important to me. But two, it also meant we could go way faster, because if I'm not leading every iteration, then we certainly can go multiple times as quickly. So for us then, out of that strategic planning, and I think if we all think about it, we know that it's critical. We then realized that a lot of the problems that we were experiencing and the bottlenecks that we were experiencing was because we at first didn't have a tiered coverage model. We were treating every customer the same, regardless of their contract value, regardless of their strategic logo status, anything. And very quickly, my team was starting to say that they were very, very overwhelmed with their books of business. And at the time, some of them were managing $150,000 portfolios, which in CS, we know that if we're going to continue to scale the company, we really, really have to multiply their portfolio capacity in order to do that. So when we were in our strategic planning session, one of the things came out was that they really needed ways to do that. And when we developed the tiered coverage model, this is similar to really any, I think, that you've worked with before. I think one, it was very liberating for the team, them being new to CS, for them to understand that they did not have to treat all customers the same. They don't have to have a weekly check-in with every single customer, especially if they're a $5,000 ARR. Just not something that they needed to do. So it was really liberating for them. So we have 3 tiers now. We have our volume customers, we have our medium touch, and we have our high touch. And we do those things based on ARR thresholds, strategic logos, key customers and things like that, as well as expansion possibility in the future, the way that we determine that. You'll see that all of our customer tiers benefit from digital engagement. That's really important to me, and that's what we'll go into talking about in just a moment here. They all benefit from automation. They all benefit from digital value propositions. So it's really, really critical that that's evident and available for customers throughout that coverage model. We do not use a pooled model. So even our volume customers technically do have a designated CSM. However, what they do with those customers in that volume segment is significantly different. So we have different playbooks for customers in the volume segment versus those in our top tier white glove high touch segment. And those are distributed throughout. So this is where the path starts to diverge, and we started moving really, really fast and starting to iterate, which is why it's no longer stepwise, but you'll see some of the things that we started to do. So one of the things that was really, really important for us, and I imagine that this is important for everyone on the call today, is we started developing automation really extensively. We didn't wait, so some of this had already begun. I'm a big believer that automation can benefit you, at least in some small capacity, almost right away. But some of the things that we did are milestone recognitions for the customers, both in product usage. Are they achieving certain things within the product, or are they doing certain things with their customers or with their students, hosting really awesome events and things like that? So automatically recognizing that they've done things by sending out an email that recognizes their milestone. We do lots of voice of customer polling, NPS, CSAT at different stages of the customer journey. So after they're in onboarding, when they're in what we would call the young adoption versus the advanced adoption phase, all sorts of different polling so that we can do that. And then with that, though, with those voice of customer things, we also have tons of follow-up activities with them. So what happens when they do give us a promoter? What happens when they give us a really poor satisfaction rating? We have all sorts of automations that either follow up with them automatically or prompt a member of the CS or even executive team, depending who it was, to follow up. We also have integration failures that we recognize. So if any of our data streams are not working, we automatically reach out to the technical point of contact at the customer to check in to see if they need any help or if there's anything we can help with. That's all automated. That there's no reason that our CSMs need to do that. We have usage data thresholds. If they breach something, like they've gone way beyond what's in their allowable contract, we reach out and let them know that, and then we set up a time to remedy it. We do tons of customer marketing, bringing them value and showing them spotlights of what other customers are doing and helping deliver the best practices to them. that sort of thing. We also do qualitative health inputs. So we really want to know what our customer sentiment is from our CSMs. Qualitative inputs are really important to me. We use them in health scoring itself. We use them in risk mitigation. So we have a lot of automation that's set up to alert the CS team that they need to give their qualitative health inputs. That we need to be checking in on those as well. And then we also do automations to alert the success team or even help them with some next steps on the customer journey. So automation is really heavy for us in this category. So the next couple of steps that we really needed to address, I love the core team at Wiser, and they also terrified me, as I said when I first joined. I started asking all kinds of questions about the renewal process. Did our contracts automatically renew? Did they not? And either we didn't know, or we had differing answers or things like that. So I literally went through and read every contract. I met with our lawyers. I was digging in, trying to figure all of that out. And then we started we use the Tatango Revenue Center for forecasting and renewal purposes. So I can give our board a full report at any time they need it. They actually have a login to Tatango, and they do know how to use it. I trained our board members on it, and I can see that they log in sometimes. We also have add-ons and expansion that we've been chasing. So for example, we're releasing a Wiser for iOS app. Our CS team is part of that. So they have the opportunity to not only benefit financially from getting a small commission on their expansions, but then we also can chase that and increase the overall contract value. So these are things that we're working on. Now, I will say, when you're talking about building a team from scratch and scaling your operations overnight, this is something that you'll want to consider. Given that my team didn't have prior CS experience, forecasting, renewal, add-ons, and expansion, that is a whole new territory for them. So that's something that has required a lot more work and is still evolving for us. So you'll just need to know that that's a trade-off and a consideration for you when you're making those decisions about what you're prioritizing and hiring and building your team. If there are certain areas that you already know are not a skill set yet, you'll have to invest time in that at some point. And then what we're really focusing on, this is our phase 2, and what we're really focused on now is our customer outcomes and our advanced journey mapping. So when I said way back at the beginning that I wanted to get just my head around what the current customer experience was and the current customer journey, it was pretty basic. It was basically get the customer live at all costs. And then we really hadn't considered what would happen thereafter. How do we continue them in adopting our products and services? How do we make sure that they continue to drive more and more and more value? So that's really what we're focused on today, identifying the customer outcomes with them, as well as more advanced journey mapping, where we're trying to push them to go and in those directions. So there's a couple of things that we're doing with those right now. One, we're working with customers to actually help them identify their outcomes. I hope this will ring true with some of you on the call today, but many of our customers, when I ask them, or when my team asks them what their goals are, they don't always have an answer. It may be our industry as well, but truly, I've asked the pointed question, why did you choose to work with Wiser? And sometimes they kind of give you a blank look, like, I don't know, I was told we needed an online thing. They don't always know. And so we really needed to make sure that we could, down the road, show them that ROI. How did it work? Did it not? Will you work with us again? So if we're not focused on the outcomes, then they're not going to be either. So one of the things that we've been doing is we actually use a form in our CS platform in Tatango, where we are having the CS team use it to gather information on the data that we need to collect. So we found that our customers really closely guard some of their goal data. They don't want to tell us, for example, what their financial goals are for enrollment, because they don't want their customers to, their competitors to know. And so we've had a little bit of a struggle with that. Surveys weren't working. The CS team asking them randomly wasn't working. And so what you see here is actually a form that we've developed that our team can use to interview the customer in one of their calls. That way they can take in the information, and then we can report on it fully, so that then we can start to prove ROI. We can deliver them the outcomes that they've actually identified with us later on. It's been quite a bit of work to teach the team to do that type of discovery and also get the customers to identify their own goals. We also, like I said, have been really focused on proving that Wiser works, right? We want to prove that it's efficacious. So we've been taking that data and putting it really deeply into studies that show correlations between student activity in our site in Wiser and then them actually enrolling at the institution. So these things are what we're arming our customers with to take to their bosses to say, look, I did this and it worked. Beyond that, we are doing the advanced journey mapping. I tried to show it to you today and it was so a mess, so I didn't put it on the screen, but the advanced journey mapping, we're really working hard to make sure that we now have next steps. What we're finding is we have some really great power users and they need more. So what we're trying to do now is find more avenues for them to even further and become those customer evangelists that we need. So some of the key takeaways that I would love for you to have today, and I'm excited to dive into your questions because I can see them coming in too. Some of the key takeaways that I would love for you to take today are, one, definitely you need to compartmentalize it. If you're in a firefighting mode where all of a sudden you're in the wonderful position of needing to scale your operations overnight, you need to prioritize your immediate, your near-term, and your long-term needs. For me, right away, I knew I didn't have a team. I had one awesome person, but I needed a lot more. So that was my immediate. And then I didn't have visibility. So that was my next thing. So I really had to prioritize that. Were renewals important? Absolutely. But I really didn't touch them for the first couple of months because I couldn't. So I just had to prioritize that. Budget's always a consideration. Of course, everybody knows that. You have to find what works and build what you have to. For me, that meant that I hired really smart people. And then I was going to build up the rest of it. It was a gamble and it worked, but you definitely have to work with what you've got there. Visibility is critical. I couldn't have done anything without Tatango, without having the visibility around it. That spreadsheet was not going to work for me. So it was really critical for me that we get that and we get the information flowing back and forth between HubSpot, back and forth between Segment.io, our product usage data. That was really absolutely mission critical. Using the automation to help us scale portfolio size was really important. I really want to drive that home. Like I said, our customer success managers started to say after a couple of months in that they were tapping out at about a $250,000 ARR portfolio. And that was not what we needed to scale. I knew that if we were going to maintain our headcount, we were going to have to take steps like a tiered coverage model, like automation and other things to support us. And now each of our reps are at about 4 or 5 times that in their capacity. We, in fact, are projecting a very, very large scale for the next calendar year. And we're not planning to add any headcount to our success team for that. So we're very excited there. And then finally, definitely be open to iteration and delegation in order to scale. What worked in the first 3 months would definitely not work for us today. So for example, everyone was implementing in the first 3 months. I knew that that wasn't going to be our long-term solution, but it worked then. So bringing the team in and having them help collaborate on what that turned into allowed me to not be the only person in charge of everything, and also have them buy in and really get us to the scale where we needed to be. So with that, I would love to turn it over to Lorena.
Thank you again, Christine, for joining us. It was a great webinar and we loved having all of you participate and interact with us.
Thanks for having me.